Okay, Boker Tov, everybody. Hope everyone can see me and hear me. We're going to get started now. This is the HaGadol Drasha to make sure you're in the right place. The HaGadol Drasha should be, if you're watching it on the screen, hopefully you can follow along. I made a little, what's called a keynote, so you can watch the different slides as they go by. And Birshut Avi Mori, my father's joining me from Montreal, a real treat. Silver linings, even in terrible gray and black clouds. Normally, my parents, or San Gesund, are never able to join, to listen in to a shir for Shabbos HaGadol because it takes place on Shabbos, and they're never here on Shabbos. So we're really glad that they are able to join us. Since I'm running a lot of different things going at the same time, I'm going to ask everyone, if you haven't yet muted your phone, to please mute your phone or your whatever you're watching on, and let's get underway. I have one other little technical problem I need to try to resolve. Half a minute. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here we are. This year's drasha seems to have new resonance suddenly, mysteriously. It is just astounding that less than 3 weeks ago, we heard a little bit in the news about COVID-19. It was something going on in China. There were some cases in Italy, and we did not have any idea what we would be up to today. Who knows what the future brings? But this is an attempt to try to give us just some pathways very practically by understanding an aspect of the Seder that, two aspects, in fact, that so often fall by the wayside because we're excited about matzah and maror and dalet koso, teseba, charoset. There's a lot to speak about. I've spoken about all these subjects, in fact, in previous years, as many rabbis do. And last year I said, I really want to focus on that which is just left on the wayside, and that's Urchatz and Rachtza. Little did I know, though I gave it on a Shabbos morning, that a year later it would take on this kind of resonance, I hope, for many of us. We're trying to safeguard ourselves and our families. There's that special quip that rabbis share with each other, that you can tell the same story in shul in a drasha once every 5 years because nobody remembers. You can tell the same joke once a year, nobody remembers. And you can give the same Dvar Torah a second time within the same drasha because nobody remembers. So here we are. This may be familiar to some of you from last year if you happen to be at the Shabbos HaGadol drasha, but I think now seeing it through the prism of the moment that we're up to, just as all the parshiot came last year and are coming again this year, we're different. And with an eye toward that, I want to focus now on these aspects. I believe that Urchatz and Rachtza are mentioned in the Simone HaSeder, and I'll be talking more about the Simone HaSeder on Sunday morning. Yes, the second Shabbos HaGadol drasha, that's Sunday morning, 10 a.m. You're welcome to tune in. Because Urchatz and Rachtza are mentioned. They have an actual worldview about avoiding tuma, ritual impurity, aspiring to kedusha, to sanctity, and of course to tahara, to purity as a prerequisite for kedusha, the encounter with Hashem. And the question I'm essentially asking is, do we as a community champion issues of tuma and tahara? They seem so foreign to so many of us, with good reason. The world of kedusha we have some attachment to, but tuma and tahara for many people is very, very challenging to even understand what's going on. And so let's embark together. Nishtana, how different are Urchatz, Rachtza, and Netilat Yadayim this year? Let's learn a little bit. First of all, I want to share with you a study that was published by the National Institutes of Health in 2015. I gave you the little abstract over here, and you're welcome to look at it. You can read it for yourself. But for those who are not able to see this and just listening in, let me read it for you. The abstract of this study explains physical cleansing is commonly understood to protect us against physical contamination. However, recent studies showed additional effects on moral judgments. Under the heading of the Macbeth effect, direct links between bodily cleansing and one's own moral purity have been demonstrated. The fundamental goal of physical cleansing is to protect us against physical contamination and hence to foster physiological health. However, Empirical studies showed that physical cleansing also touches psychological aspects. Importantly, the psychological effect of physical cleansing is not limited to the moral domain. Recent studies showed that washing one's hands can wash off traces of the past in general. So what this study basically teaches, and it uses the example of the Macbeth effect. If you remember your Shakespeare, you will recall that Lady Macbeth incites her husband to kill the king. And then there's a lot of hand washing going on. Out, spot. I skipped a word. It's a family audience over here. But there's an obsession with, if we could only wash our hands, we could wash our hands of what has happened. It lowers, in a certain way, the aspect of when a person is engaged in the act of washing their hands, it can actually have an impact on them from a psychological perspective. So that's something for us to consider. NPR noted also just about 10 years ago, this fascinating study of a researcher named Spike Lee, no relation to the filmmaker, who pointed out that people often say, I want to start with a clean slate, cleanliness associated with starting again. And maybe he asked, maybe there's a broader phenomenon here. Anything from the past, any kind of negative emotional experiences might be washed away. So perhaps that is the case. And we should think about that a little bit. I'm just sort of setting the stage to think about it. By the way, the Daled Kosot, there are 4 of them. They frame the whole Seder. When you're saying Kadesh, Urchatz, they're not mentioned. They're Kadesh because it's Kiddush. How come the other 3 didn't get mentioned? Why are we doing Urchatz as a second stage? Why is there no bracha for it? So let's start with Rachtza. I'm going to dial back to Urchatz because it's the more mysterious of the set. I want to start first by talking with you about a story. This is a really astounding story. It's a story of one of our great Jewish heroes, leaders, Chachamim, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was imprisoned. I presume this is his imprisonment that culminated, sadly, in his martyrdom as described in the Gemara Masechet Brachot. This Gemara is Masechet Eruvin. And it tells a story here, the translation courtesy of Sensino. I'll do my own loose translation over here. Tana Rabbanon. Maseh Rabbi Akiva shechosh veita asurin. V'hay Rabbi Yeshua Garsi misharto. B'chol yom vayom. Haymachnisin lo mayim b'midah. So it was, there was a story about Rabbi Akiva who was imprisoned there in the prison. Rabbi Yeshua Hagarsi, who was his student, was his attendant. He would come every day with water, a certain measure of water. Yom echad matzo shomer beita asurin. One day, the warden of the prison saw him going in. Amar lo, hayom meimecha merubin. You have too much water today. Shema lachtor beita asurin tatzarich. You're using this maybe to help burrow a hole. You're going to pour it in some kind of hole to expand it in order to escape. Shafach chetzian v'natan lo chetzian. He poured out half the water. He gave him the other half. Kshabayitza Rabbi Akiva amar lo. Rabbi Akiva saw his student come into the cell. He said to him, Yeshua, ein ati yodea shezakin ani b'chayai tluin b'chayecha. So he said to him, don't you know that I'm old? That my life depends on you now? I'm imprisoned. I'm confined here. Sachlo kol ota ma'ora. He told him the whole story about what had happened, that the jailer had poured out half the water. Amar lo, he said to him, Tain li mayim she'atol yadai. Give me the water. I want to wash Netilat Yadayim. Amar lo, said the student to the teacher, Lishtot ein magiyin. Litol yadecha magiyin? You don't have enough water left in this pail to drink, Rebbe. You want to use it now for Netilat Yadayim? Amar lo, he said to Maya, said, what can he do? What can I do? Said Rabbi Akiva to his Talmud, Rabbi Shua Garsi. He said, what should I do? I'm stuck. Shechayavim aleihen mita, mutav amut mitat atzmi v'lo avor al dat chaverai. He said, if I don't do what I need to do now, I will obligate myself to be put to death for having neglected, essentially, Netilat Yadayim. It's a strange story. Better that I should die on account of myself, i.e. not having consumed enough water, v'lo avor al dat chaverai, and that I should not violate what my friends have said, his colleagues. Amru, they said about him, Lotam klum chehevi lomayim v'nato yadav. He did not drink anything until he used the water to wash his hands. Kishamu chachamim b'davar amru, ma beziknuto kach bi'alduto lachat kama v'kama. This is how he was when he was in his old age. You can imagine what he was like as a person when he was young and full of vigor. This is how he behaves in prison. Right? When he wasn't in prison, how much more so did he behave in a way that was strict about halacha? Now, this is a strange story. In the air today, wafting through all the airwaves, pretty much, in our world, the Olam HaTorah, everybody is screaming, your life comes first, don't do anything risky, take care of yourself. Yet somehow, Rabbi Kiva says, I'm not going to violate this. I won't go against my colleagues. I have every intention of fulfilling this aspect of Judaism, Netilat Yadayim. What about Pikuach Nefesh? We'll have to come back to this story. But it does show you there's something here about Netilat Yadayim that for Rabbi Akiva was existential on a certain level, strange though it may seem, more important than his own life. This is lahalacha v'lo l'maaseh. No one should take this and consider this to be halacha psuka. But why did Chazal tell us a Maaseh Rav, a story about a great Rebbe? And this is the story? The source of Netilat Yadayim, we'll come back to this story in a few minutes. The source of Netilat Yadayim in the Torah is actually in Parshat Shmini. We're going to read it right after Pesach. It is connected intrinsically to Yetziat Mitzrayim and to the idea that Mitzrayim embodies Tum'ah, ritual impurity, and we are people who aspire to Tahara. In chapter 11 of Sefer Vayikra, the end of Parshat Shmini, there's a list of all of the various animals that are forbidden. And then the culmination of the Parsha, this is really the tail end of Parshat Shmini. Al tishaktzut nafshotechem b'chol asher tishoretz v'lo titam'u bahem v'nitmeitem bam. The admonition that people, the Jewish people, should not make themselves an abomination, their own spirits, through eating anything that creeps, and don't defile yourselves and become tmeim, become ritually impure. Pasuk Mem Daled, Ki ani Hashem Elokeichem, for I am Hashem your God, v'hit kadishtem, you shall sanctify yourselves, v'item kidoshim, ki kadosh ani, v'lo tetam'u et nafshotechem b'chol asheretz haromeis al haaretz. You should sanctify yourselves, be holy, for I am holy, says Hashem. Don't defile your spirits with all that creeps upon the land. The sheretz, a particular category of animal, referring to different kinds of rodents, different kinds of things like that. Ki ani Hashem hama'aleh etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elokim v'yitem kedoshim ki kadosh ani. For I am Hashem who has brought you up. Think about that imagery. I've elevated you from the land of Egypt to be for you a God, and you shall be holy, for I am holy. Hashem is the definition of Kedusha. Therefore, all elements of Kedusha are about getting closer to Hashem. A place that is more kadosh is closer to Hashem. A time that is more kadosh is a time closer to Hashem. And a person who has sanctified themselves is an individual who is closer to Hashem. It's interesting. The admonition comes here with, I think, new resonance this year, maybe, without casting aspersions, but it's interesting. Don't eat various things that creep on the ground. Don't eat various animals that you're not supposed to eat. It will have a deleterious impact on you. It will be defiling. Look with me at the Gemara, the Masachet Brachot, Daf Nun Gimel Amid Bet. It's the middle of the line. The Amar of Yehuda Marav, v'Amar of Matnita Tana, v'hit kadishtem, elu mayim rishonim. What is the word v'hit kadishtem? I highlighted in yellow for you. What does that word mean? That means the Netilat Yadayim that precedes a meal. Mayim rishonim. Okay, v'item kedoshim. We'll deal with the rest another time. But the idea that Netilat Yadayim, at least as far as this Gemara is concerned, is sourced in the Torah, should put us on notice. By the by, it's not clear that it's therefore a mitzvah to oraita. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. But there is here a source, at least, that the Gemara tells us that connects intrinsically Netilat Yadayim and leaving that place of total tuma, of complete and abject impurity, Mitzrayim. We deal with sanctification every time we come to the dinner table. The Aruch HaShulchan said it very beautifully. Why don't we have to do Netilat Yadayim every single time we put food in our mouth? And he answered, because an achila shel kviyut, a set time for eating, that has both hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and they conclude with birkat hamazon, 3 brachot of birkat hamazon, which are themselves a fulfillment, deoraita, a biblical fulfillment of the mitzvah of the chalta v'savata uve'rachta. And of course, we have extra brachot. Chazal added on the 4th bracha, and then we have the harachmans, etc. he writes, when you have an achila shel kviyut, a set meeting of a food time, a dinner, a meal, v'nikeret hakedusha. You can sense the sanctity. You have a sense that you can detect it within your own home, at your own table. I gave you a picture here of some kind of Seder. Looks very beautiful, straight out of Google Images, but it's whatever your table looks like. And that the idea that a person who eats derech arai, a person who eats in a haphazard manner, will not be able to sense kedusha. That's the Aruch HaShulchan writes here further down for those who want to read it inside. Rav Soloveitchik has a lot about this, by the way, in his Sefer Festival of Freedom, posthumously published, where he writes about an animal eating in a very haphazard manner, in a nomadic fashion. A person sits down, has a certain order to it. So the Aruch HaShulchan, saying it, I guess, much less lyrically, but very trenchantly, the achila of kviyut with hamotzi and birkat hamazon means that one can recognize kedusha. And I've had various rebbeim over the years in various places, whether it's in high school growing up, or even I can remember in the Grus Kollel in Yerushalayim, Kodesh of Yeshiva University. I can remember still the rebbeim, they were giving mussar to the boys who were in the yeshiva, then called BMT, Olav Shalom, that yeshiva, screaming, Birkat Hamazon, Rabotai, Birkat Hamazon. But it stayed with me. Why are we running away from Birkat Hamazon? That opportunity to say brachot and to frame it against the backdrop of having actually raised one's hands up through Netilat Yadayim. Here's a strange story that was actually a story in which there was a sort of a question asked of one of the Chachamim. You and I, we're all going to go to the Seder, and at our Seder, regardless of how many people we're zochah to have with us, maybe we're sitting alone, but I fundamentally believe when we invoke the names of the great tzaddikim, of the 5 tzaddikim who are sitting in Bnei Brak, so we're bringing them to our Seder in a certain way. I don't mean this in a phantasmagoric manner. I'm saying in a very practical way. You're conjuring in your mind's eye. These were Chachamim. They went through tough times. Those 5 Chachamim went to Bnei Brak because they couldn't go to Yerushalayim because the Beit HaMikdash had been destroyed. One of them was Rabbi Tarfon. The Sifri in Parshat Korach, it's a Sefer Bamidbar, and Parshat Korach explains that one time Rabbi Tarfon was late coming to the Beit Midrash. And Rabban Gamliel said to him, why are you so late? So Rabbi Tarfon said to Rabban Gamliel, oh, I was right now doing an avoda meaning like a Kohen would. Rabbi Tarfon was a Kohen. So Rabban Gamliel, who said to him, what are you talking about? That's nonsense. There's no avoda now. There's no Beit HaMikdash. We're living in a moment that there's no Beit HaMikdash. What avoda could you possibly be doing? Amarlo, so he said, but you know there is something called an avodat matana, etein et kihunatchem. I gave you the pasuk on the bottom, it's in Parshat Korach, that there will be a service that every Kohen will practice outside of the Beit HaMikdash, and as Rebbe writes in the same Sifra, and give it to you here, even when there is no Beit HaMikdash standing, and that is the eating of truma. A Kohen eats the sanctified foods. They have a kedusha of truma. Truma is a tithe. This only applies, obviously, in Eretz Yisrael. And today, sadly, we still, at this moment, don't give the hafrasha of the trumot and masrot to the Kohanim and the Leviim. God willing, by tomorrow we will be. Maybe later today. Mashiach Tzidkenu could arrive any time on Chodesh Nisan. The window is open, my friends. So the idea that the Kohanim did and will again have this idea of achila b'kedusha, that the eating of the truma itself, even their own homes, they got these gifts, of course, some fellow Jews who were not Kohanim, they would eat them, they had to wash their hands before they ate these foods. Why? Because they were engaged in something that was more sanctified. By the way, this is patterned after the idea that when the Kohanim would go in to do the service in the Beit HaMikdash, what would they do? They would have to wash their hands and their feet. So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, in that same Sifra, and give it to you here, he says, how come you don't have to wash your feet today? He says, because nobody's doing an avoda with their feet anymore. But our hands are still engaged with the world. Everybody's, right? So he says, any place where your avoda is going to involve your hands and your feet, so you'd have to wash your hands and your feet. In the Beit HaMikdash, you weren't allowed to wear shoes. Everyone have to walk through the Beit HaMikdash barefoot. So therefore, they wash their hands and their feet. But here you can have this even in your own home. And the idea that it can transcend the existence of the Mikdash, that a person can have a sense in their own home, if they're a Kohen, that they could be doing an avoda, a service of Hashem. A Kohen could be doing a service of Hashem, not in the Mikdash, not in the Mikdash Ma'at of the Beit Knesset, of the Shul, but maybe in their own Mikdash Ma'at they have to make now in their own house. Something for us to consider, and maybe something for us to do. It is from this that the Gemara teaches we learn one of the roots about why we have to do Netilat Yadayim every time any of us eats bread. And that is the Gemara in Masechet Chulin. If you just look toward the top line, Amar of Idi bar Avi, Amar of Yitzchak bar Ashian, Netilat Yadayim lechulin. It's the third line. Netilat Yadayim lechulin mipnei srach truma. We have to wash our hands for chulin. That is to say, when we eat bread. Why? Because we are concerned about what's called srach truma. Srach truma means essentially we are concerned about the impact on those who eat truma. Meaning, we want to condition those, Rashi on the bottom, we want to condition those who are going to be eating truma, that is to say, kohanim, to wash their hands when they eat regular bread, so that when they're eating the bread, that is the bread of truma, they'll be ready. I know your question. Your question is, no doubt, a very simple one. Your question is a very simple one. I'm not a Kohen. This is great. I'm not a Kohen, and there's no Beit HaMikdash. Like, you want me every single day? I have to wash my hands for truma. I'm like, it's srach truma. So I'm not. It doesn't. Why should I have to do it? So the first answer could be very simply, okay, I mean, what's called the lo plug rabbanon in some way. There's a blanket policy, and that is to condition everybody. Everybody's going to be eating this way, and therefore kohanim will be eating this way. And then when they get truma, they'll do it. It's a beautiful idea, but what does that have to do with me? I submit to you, it has everything to do with us. When we stood at Har Sinai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked each of us to aspire to be more. Vatem to you li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. And you shall be for me, says Hashem, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. We're meant to set a high bar. We're meant to aspire to something, and to aspire to the world specifically of kahuna. Once upon a time, kohanim were not just going to be the kohanim. It was meant to be many, many more people within Klal Yisrael. Sadly, it didn't work out that way. However, we still have aspirations, and we ought to reach high for those aspirations. Perhaps, this is reminding us about the metaphysical world of Tumah and Tahara and the gradations thereof. There's a rule of thumb that we have in Judaism. The higher the level of kedusha of something, the more fragile it is. The easier it is for it to be knocked off balance. The more something aspires to tahara, to purity, the easier it is for it to be defiled. The sages decreed that hands, generally speaking, should be considered tameim. Why? They write askani yodheim. The hands engage the world. They touch things. They have what is described as shniot l'tuma. They are a secondary layer of ritual impurity. They normally cannot make food impure, normal food. The hands just touch regular food. But kodshim, meaning truma, that which is sacralized, fruits, vegetables. When we say fruits and vegetables, it includes, of course, I mentioned before, wheat, and therefore bread. So for that, we need to aspire to put ourselves on a higher level as well. Through the act of Netilat Yadayim, through Rachtza, the washing Netilat Yadayim before the matzah itself at the Seder, and throughout the year, we're perhaps being asked to be more sensitive to gradations of Kedusha and Tahara within the world. I want to go back now to that Gemara that we saw a moment ago and see the next piece of it. Going back to that Gemara now. We saw up to line 3. The Gemara has another reason why we need to do Netilat Yadayim every time we're going to have a meal. The Od, and further on line 3 of the Gemara, it's on the right-hand side. Mishum mitzvah, on account of the mitzvah. My mitzvah, what mitzvah is that? Amar Abaye says, mitzvah lishma divrei chachamim. It's a mitzvah to listen to the words of the chachamim. That's the mitzvah. The Torah says in Parshat Shoftim, 17th chapter of Sefer Devarim, the idea of lo tasur, not to stray from the words of the sages. The sages enacted it. Abaye says that's what it means. The mitzvah is to listen to what the chachamim say. Rava says mitzvah lishma divrei Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. We have to listen to this particular Tana, this particular sage of the Mishnah, and he gives a proof. And the idea is, skip the proof, it's from Parshat Mitzorah, but Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, 4 lines up from the bottom to the end. Mikan samchu chachamim linetilat yadayim min haTorah. From here, did the chachamim see the constant netilat yadayim from the Torah? What's the argument between Abaye and Rava? On the face of it, it sounds like, according to Abaye, there's a general mitzvah to listen to Rabbanan. The Rabbanan, the Chachamim made a takana, they made an enactment, you have to wash your hands. So now everyone should do it because it's a rabbinic enactment. According to Rava, on the face of it, and it's the way Rashi seems to see it as well, that actually it is biblical in nature based on the Drasha of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. Look with me on the left-hand side at Tosfot. Mitzvah lishma divrei chachamim. Tosfot say, on the first, the 4 lines down and now 5 lines down from the top on the left-hand side. V'im tomar, if you will ask, v'alo mishum srach truma tiknua, v'im kein mai v'od. If it already says specifically, here's the reason. Srach truma. Srach truma means we're concerned about the routine as regards truma. Again, for Kohanim, and therefore we expand it to everybody. So then why do you have to v'od? And by the way, here's a second reason. Say Tosfot v'od, yesh lomar, the tiknu mishum nekiyut. The mitzvah, according to Bali Tosfot, is a reference to cleanliness. It was another religion that would perhaps adopt this as an aphorism in some of their sermons. This goes back to the 18th century. I think John Wesley was the preacher's name. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Okay, we won't formulate it that way because it doesn't sound Jewish. But here you have the Bali Tosfot. You know why you should wash your hands before the meal? To stay clean. Hygiene. The Bali Tosfot, it came to an end, the Bali Tosfot on our page, as generations of Chachamim at the end of the 13th century, pretty much. They're reminding us about the importance of hygiene. New resonance this year, yeah? Then the Bali Tosfot here say, well, the truth is, when Rava said that Rabbi Elazar ben Arach learned it deoraita, he didn't literally mean deoraita, he meant it was really an asmachta. It's really, meaning it's almost like I use the word tentatively, it's almost like a mnemonic device to remind us how important Netilat Yadayim is. The Chachamim learned it, they said it's a mitzvah, but they connected it something in the Torah as an anchor. It's not that it literally came from the Torah and it's a biblical mitzvah. Okay, so that's as far as that. Let's go in a little bit further, a little deeper. It is this idea about mitzvah lishma divrei chachamim, Abaye, and then Rava's idea that there's some kind of a mitzvah. Right? Both of them agree that the reason why we should do the Netilat Yadayim, in addition to srach truma, the routinization of truma aspiring to be a kohen, is actually that it's a mitzvah, regardless of its rationale, enactment of Chazal, and according to Rava, it has roots in the Torah. Rachtza doraita, more likely it's really an asmachta. Just look at the syntax of the bracha al Netilat Yadayim itself. We say this bracha countless times. I should have written it for you in case you don't remember it off by heart. But right, the Aruch HaShulchan, again, just a beautiful formulation. The syntax of the bracha, I wrote this in English, but this is basically what he's saying. The syntax of the bracha al Netilat Yadayim itself, the words that we say after we wet our hands, reflects both the source of authority, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. God never said in the Torah directly, thou shalt wash your hands, but rather the source of authority is the Chachamim, of those who composed it, as well as the trajectory of seeking Kedusha. Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. He sanctified us. Al Netilat Yadayim means taking your hands in hand. It means raising the hands. Umavarach Asher Kiddushanu v'chulei al Netilat Yadayim. They came to Chachamim tiknu zeh shayach lomar v'tzivanu. Mikra de Lotasser, from the Pasuk Lotasser from Parashat Shoftim, the authority of the Chachamim to enact such enactments. Vigam, and further, Asher Kiddushanu, who sanctified us. Shayach Lomar, it's appropriate to say this, gave into some Chuzeh Akra, the Vehit Kadishtem, the aforementioned verse from the end of Parshat Shmini. Let's go back to the prison. What exactly was Rabbi Akiva thinking about? How could he have told or taught his student, I may live, I may die, I don't have enough water, but I think I'm going to choose Netilat Yadayim. What a fateful decision. Why? So Tosfot there on the page of that story that we learned previously, they actually raised this. Wait a minute. When a person's in an encampment, it means really a military camp, but it certainly applies if one is in prison. You don't have to do Netilat Yadayim. If there's enough water, you need to spare the water. So if a kolsha came to Makam Sakanah, the more so he's in a dangerous place. I put it highlighted in yellow. They write here specifically, Machmir Atzma Haya. He was stringent upon himself. He took it upon himself. Again, I read that also say, like, he's being machmir on himself and possibly the pain of death? Look with me at the Gemara at the bottom of the page. It's true. Under normal circumstances, a person may not endanger their life for the fulfillment of any mitzvah bar 3. Those 3 or to prevent the violation of 3 mitzvot. Those 3 mitzvot, of course, are: one may not commit murder, one may not commit acts of sexual immorality, and one may not bow down to idols. Other than those 3, the person's compelled to do something to save their life, they do it. But there is a caveat. And the caveat is if there's a period of destruction. If there is a decree against Judaism that is running through the world by nefarious foes of our people, the Amalekim of each generation. Says the Gemara, the bottom of this slide here on the right-hand side. This is the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin. Ki'at Rav Dimi Amar, Bishat Hashmad, at a time of destruction, a time of persecution. Some read this, some verses of the Gemara have Gzeirat HaMalchut. And the footnotes in the Gemara, the Vilna Shas, some of them say to destroy Judaism. That was the point. Then afilu mitzvah kali yareg val yavar, even on the simplest, smallest, seemingly most insignificant mitzvah, a person should die before violating it. Why? The system is under attack. My mitzvah kala, what's a light mitzvah? What's the example? Amar Rav Bar Yitzchak, Amar Rav, afilu lishnuye arkatam de misana. Even if there's a particular way Jewish people tie their shoes that's different than the way the non-Jewish world ties their shoelaces. If there's a Jewish way of doing business, is there a mitzvah there? Really, that's a mitzvah? That's a minhag? It's what Jewish people do, became the minhag in that generation. If a person will violate even that, they're helping the system crumble, Khalila. Therefore, the system under threat means that the threshold for what a person should go up against and be willing to lose their life for should actually also be commensurate with that. Why is Rabbi Akiva in prison? Because the Bar Kochba revolt, sadly, was crushed. Between 132 and 135, a man, Rabbi Akiva himself, thought Mashiach Tzidkenu. Chizkat Mashiach Tzidkenu. He thought this is going to be the end of Jewish history. The Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt. There'll be a third Jewish Commonwealth. And sadly, it wasn't meant to be. Bar Kochba died. The rebellion was crushed. Haruge Beitar, terrible, terrible massacres. Yerushalayim was plowed under and sowed with salt. That was when its name was changed away from being called Yerushalayim Yer Kodesh to another name. That's when the land known as Eretz Yisrael, the Navi Yechezkel and others, the land of Klal Yisrael, was redubbed Palestine by the Romans in order to distance Jews' identity from it. And then they arrested rabbis, and among them Rabbi Akiva. What became known later as the Hadrianic persecution, the Asaru Gemachal, the 10 martyrs. Everybody knows these stories. Rabbi Akiva here is in jail. That's why he's in jail, even for a small thing. Now, how was the system under threat in the days of Rabbi Akiva? Well, it's patently obvious based on what was going on. But I want to share with you something that seems on the face of it to be more subtle. I didn't give you this source inside. You'll understand why momentarily. It's from a book called Pesach Dorot by a professor named Yosef Tabori. On page 206 of that book, he describes the following conflict that was going on in the time period of around the Second Temple period, and no doubt in the decades following it. We have not one, not two, we have 3 sources in a book that is important to Western culture and for understanding Western culture, which I believe Jewish people have no business reading even a word in if they haven't yet gone through all 24 books of the Tanakh and perhaps even completed Shas inside. But he quotes it. He's a historian. This is what he says. The New Testament gives us 3 different examples about how early Christians, who of course at the beginning were all Jews, born Jewish, about how they were encountering what were known as the Pharisees. Pharisees like Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, etc. Rabbi Gamliel. The early Christians would criticize the Prushim, would criticize the Chachamim. Why? They would criticize them for doing Netilat Yadayim before eating bread. 3 separate places. The book of Matthew, the book of Mark, and the book of Luke. Ayin Sham in Tabori's book. You can look it up online. Or actually better, don't bother. I'm telling it to you now. The Prushim, the Pharisees, that's us, friends, are berating Oto Ha'ish, himself, and his disciples. Why do you not wash Netilat Yadayim before bread? And you know what the answer is they basically got? Who cares about that? Doesn't matter. Tuman Tahara, that's old world. The Beit HaMikdash is destroyed. All that matters now is what you say and what you do and your behavior toward others, your ethics. But rituals, Tuman Tahara, finished. That's old hat, my friends. We don't need that anymore. And you can read actually, that the Prushim are saying to them, why aren't you washing your hands before you eat bread? Oh, we don't need that. Now enter Rabbi Akiva. Now Rabbi Akiva is in prison. Now everything that Rabbi Akiva does is going to be told and retold. L'netzach netzachim, for all generations. And you'll say, okay, well, they were doing this. Was there persecution about it? Look at this story with me. This is a story. I'll tell you the story here. Outside, you can read it for yourself. Inside, I'll read just a few select lines. It's the Bamidbar Rabbah, the Medrash Rabbah on Parshat Balak. At the time of a gzeira, a decree, there was a store owner. Actually, you would say he was like the owner of what they used to call a kretschma, of an inn. He's an innkeeper. He has a kitchen there, a restaurant. Is a Jew who had two pots. He had a pot that was with kosher meat and a pot that had pig in it. Why? Why was he selling pig? He didn't want the non-Jewish authorities to know that he was Jewish. So he hid his identity by putting a pot of pig up. There's the smell of chazer schmaltz is wafting through his store, and on the side, he keeps kosher meat that he's cooking. This was his minhag. When people would come into the store to sit down to eat, if a person came into the store and did not wash their hands for bread, then he knew that they were an idolater. He knew that they were not truly connected to Klal Yisrael, and they were already adoptive of another religion or of no religion at all. And what would he do? He'd serve them a nice plate of chazer. Anybody who did wash their hands and made a bracha, you could see the lips moving. Yadayim. They're making the bracha until it's Yadayim, wiping their hands. He would give them the kosher meat. One time a Jew came in to eat, and the Jew wasn't so careful. He didn't wash his hands until at Yadayim. What could the restaurateur do? He said, this person is not a Jew. Put a piece of pig in front of him. The guy sat down and he ate the pig. He didn't bench. He came to pay the bill for the bread and for the meat. And he said, well, here's what you owe. You owe me this and this for the bread that you ate at the restaurant. Here's what you owe me for the meat that you ate. And this is how much it costs. He gave him the price. The customer said, I'm sorry, yesterday I ate it for less money. Now you want to take more money? So the fellow told him, oh, well, what you ate is pig. So, the price is different for the pig. Kevin Sha'amar Lokach, when he told him this, I gave it to you in English on the top. Amdu Sa'arotav, the hair stood up in the back of his head. Nivhal v'nechpaz, he was terrified. Amar lo betzina, he said to him quietly in an undertone, he whispered to him, Yehudi ani, I am a Jew. V'natatali basar chazir, you gave me chazer? Amar li said to him, the stoner said to him, your spirit should go out, means like fat. When I saw that you're eating without Netilat Yadayim, you're not making brachas, I thought you're not Jewish. Mikan, from here, the sages thought, Mayim Rishonim hechilo basar chazir. On account of the Mayim Rishonim, a person was fed pig, literally. This story, by the way, variants of this story appear in the Gemara Masechet Yuma and Daf Pei Gimel, and the Gemara in Chulin and Daf Kuf Vav. I gave you the one in the Medrash. So what's the critique of the early Christians? What's the critique of the quote-unquote modern world in the wake of the Churban? Who cares about you, Chachamim, and your Takanot? Makes no sense. Why would you bother? There's no Beit HaMikdash. There's not really going to be Truma for much longer anyway. Forget about rituals. Forget about Tuman Tahara. Ethics is everything. Your belief, your charitable works, everything else is bunk. We've been freed from the law, as someone later on would say. So what's the Leila Seder? The Leila Seder, like a drum beat, again and again, the tempo, again and again, mitzvah lishma divrei chachamim. It's a mitzvah to listen to the words of the chachamim. Who are the chachamim? Who are the chachamim who enacted it, who lived by it, and who lived in the first time period of struggle? Maaseh, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Gamliel, all the chachamim you see at your Seder. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, etc. Bnei Brak. Further along, it's Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Gamliel, all these people. They're at your Seder, their takanot are at our Sedarim. Now, if we can't be those chachamim, and we can't be those chachamim, at least let's pose together the sages, the question of the Ben Chacham. Chacham mahu omer. What does he say? What does he ask? We know this like the back of our hand. Look at the gradations here. Edot are different types of mitzvot and mishpatim, which are different than chukim. Edot means testimonies. Shabbat, tefillin. These are mitzvot that are signs. They testify to most sacred commitments, our values and ideals. Mishpatim, anything rational. It makes sense to us for a just society. It makes sense to us that these mitzvot have been promulgated, whether they're ben adam lamakom or ben adam lachaveiro. What are chukim? Those are edicts. Those reasons we really don't understand. And when we say we really don't understand, the first thing our rational faculty does is to treat them lightly. Don't tread lightly with these mitzvot. These mitzvot de Rabbanan, these takanot. That's my word to you this year. And it is hopefully something we can each of us take to our Sedarim. I want to share with you a book that was deeply impactful for me just a few years ago. And last year I spoke about it. There's a book club here in Skokie. They picked up the book. They said, "Oh, we're gonna learn this book. We're gonna read it. It's gonna be our subject." It's a book by an NYU professor named Jonathan Haidt. It's called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. I warn you in advance, there are parts in there that are, shall we say, graphic. They're not family-oriented. I believe this is a crucial book to understanding our moment. It gave me great insight. Hold on one second. Be right back in 1 minute. The perils of a live shear, that my Shabbos clock goes off at 10:30 in the morning, and it's off by 15 minutes, so it just went off now. Okay, I want to be able to see the page. Jonathan Haidt is an individual who has a PhD from Penn, from University of Pennsylvania, and then he came to study in the University of Chicago with someone named Richard Schwader, who was a professor of cultural anthropology at University of Chicago. In 1993, he became a Fulbright scholar, and he traveled to India, to the town of Orissa, which is the capital city of the province of Bhubaneswar in India. So when he went to India, what happened is he discovered something. He discovered that the world has a more diverse series of categories of morality than we do here in the West as Westerners. I don't mean as Jews here, but as people who live in the West. And I think this is crucial to understanding what's going on with Netilat Yadayim generally and with Urchatz and Rachtza specifically. Listen carefully. He writes, I was particularly drawn to a new theory of morality Schwader had developed based on his research in Orissa. After he published that study, he and his colleagues continued to analyze the 600 interview transcripts they had collected. They found three major clusters of moral themes, which they called the ethics of autonomy, community, and divinity. Each one is based on a different idea about what a person really is. The ethic of autonomy, writes Haidt, is based on the idea that people are first and foremost autonomous individuals with wants, needs, and preferences. People should be free to satisfy these wants, needs, and preferences as they see fit. And so societies develop moral concepts such as rights, liberty, and justice, which allow people to coexist peacefully without interfering too much in each other's projects. This is the dominant ethic of individualistic societies. You can find in the writings of utilitarians such as John Stuart Mill and Peter Singer, who are value, justice, and rights only to the extent that they increase human welfare. And you find in the writings of deontologists such as Kant and Kohlberg, who prize justice and rights, even in cases where doing so may reduce overall welfare. Now listen to this. If you zoned out, listen to this next part. But as soon as you step out of Western secular society, you hear people talking in two additional moral languages. The ethic of community is based on the idea that people are, first and foremost, members of larger entities, such as families, teams, armies, companies, tribes, and nations. These larger entities are more than the sum of the people who compose them. They are real, they matter, and they must be protected. People have an obligation to play their assigned roles in these entities. Many societies therefore develop moral concepts such as duty, hierarchy, respect, reputation, and patriotism. In such societies, the Western insistence that people should design their own lives and pursue their own goals seems selfish and dangerous, a sure way to weaken the social fabric and destroy the institutions and collective entities upon which everyone depends. The ethic of divinity is based on the idea that people are first and foremost temporary vessels within which a divine soul has been implanted. People are not just animals with an extra serving of consciousness. They are children of God and should behave accordingly. The body is a temple, in our parlance, a mikdash, and not a playground. V'asu limikdash, v'shachanti betocham. All notions of kehila, all notions of our nationhood, all of this connected intrinsically to these two other moralities that people in Western secular culture cannot understand or fathom. To them, it's insanity. But said height, I took this trip in 1993. You're not going to believe what I discovered. I discovered that aside from autonomy, there's something called community as a value. There's something called divinity as a value. It's cross-cultural. So he defined, and here I'm summarizing a book of many hundreds of pages, of course, the moral palette, the moral axes by which Westerners understand the world are the top three. Care versus harm. Am I caring for someone? Am I hurting them? Am I being fair or am I cheating them? Justice. And finally, liberty or oppression, the value of freedom. But when he went to these other places, India, as an example, by the way, Jonathan Haidt writes in the book, he's Jewish. He's born to immigrants from the Tsar's Russia. They came before World War II, obviously before World War I, presumably. And he's a Yid, he's Kedushas Yisrael. Why he didn't find this in Torah and mitzvahs? I'm a patient man. I think maybe now he's sitting at home looking up shiurim. Who knows? Maybe he's listening to this shiur. I don't know. Not make too much of it. But look at the other three. He said in other societies, there are three other axes of morality. Are you loyal? Or did you betray society or the group? Do you have a respect for authority? Or are you about subversion of authority? And look at the bottom one. Sanctity versus degradation. Three more axes. He summarizes. There's a word he uses called weird. What does the word weird mean? It's a cute acronym. Weird, he says, stands for people who are Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. The people who belong to nations that are weird, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, the weirder you are, the more you perceive a world full of separate objects rather than relationships. Moral pluralism is true descriptively. As a simple matter of anthropological fact, the moral domain varies across cultures. It means you go to India, they have morality. They have their own morality, but they have concepts that run along these lines. The moral domain is unusually narrow in weird cultures, where it is largely limited to the ethic of autonomy, i.e. moral concerns about individuals harming, oppressing, or cheating other individuals. It is broader, including the ethics of community and divinity in most other societies, and within religious and conservative moral matrices within weird societies. Moral matrices bind people together and blind them to the coherence or even existence of other matrices. This makes it very difficult for people to consider the possibility there might be more than one form of moral truth or more than one valid framework for judging people or running a society. That last point we'll shelve for now, but I hope you got the point of this whole idea. What about us as the Jewish people? How are we doing? As Klal Yisrael. You and me, the Ma'aminim B'nai Ma'aminim, the inheritors of a very rich patrimony. Look at how we have all six of these. Yes? Yetziat Mitzrayim was about the first three of these things. Care, fairness, liberty. But it was nothing if it was not also the bottom three. Loyalty, authority, and sanctity. That's a part and parcel of what it means to have been among the Yotzei Mitzrayim. And that's what our Seder is. Now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who lived at the moment of the Churban, was attacked by people who wanted to polemicize against him. Jews, in some cases non-Jews. Here's a non-Jew. The Pesach Rav Kana tells a story that someone said to him, well, you know, what's this business with Tuma and Tahara, the Para Aduma? Remember, he was alive when there was no more Beit HaMikdash, but there was still a question, could they do the Para Aduma on Har HaZeitim facing the place of the Mikdash? A whole question there, whether they could or they couldn't, how long. So he pushed off the non-Jew. He gave him an answer, but the Talmidim were sitting with him, presumably now in Yavne, and he said to them, they said to him, Rebbe, you pushed them off. What do you say to us? Amar Lem, he said to them, Chayechem, by your lives, lo hamet metamev, lo hamayim metarim. The dead one is not really inherently impure, and it's not the water that's really from the Efer Para, it's really making someone pure. Rather, el gzerata shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's all from Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made chukim. He made rules. not there's something intrinsic, something chemical in the water. These are all decrees from Hashem. The Rambam codified this idea at the end of Hilchot Mikvot. Davar bar v'galui, shatumad v'tarot, gzeirat hakatuvhein, ve'enam midvarim shadayt shel adam mechrato, v'arehem michlal hachukim. The whole world of Tumah and Tahara is a chuk. It is not related to the rational faculty. El gzeirat hakatuvhi v'adavar tolu b'kavanat halev. And that's why he writes, and he goes on to explain, let's say a person, a woman was going to the mikveh, or a man was going to, whoever goes to the mikveh, and they don't have in mind that it has anything to do with the mitzvah. They go, they stam, they come out, they didn't think of it. So if their kavanah was not to be matar themselves and they went in the water, so it's questionable if they really are yotze in the mitzvah. And almost all circumstances say it didn't work. It's true for Netilat Yadayim too. The idea that Tumah and Tahara requires a kavanah balev to understand what's going on, and not because there's intrinsically something in the water, the Efer Para. Not that there's something, the mikvah is magic. It's that once it's that way, Kadosh Baruch Hu goes there, he decrees that this is the Gzeira, this is a mikveh Tahara. Once it has mem sa'ah, this is what it does. This is the water that Chachamim say, when you put it in the cup and you pour it twice on the right hand, twice on the left hand, with a cup, with handles, and you pour it that way, a cup without a spout, a cup that's not broken, and then you make this bracha, so you're engaged with the world of Tumah and Tahara. Something for us to think about. Okay. We're running a little short on time, so here's one other aspect having to do with Kedusha. I'm just going to start here from the last paragraph, and I'll just read it to you if you're just listening in. I think it's really important, and he's talking very generally about religions, but I think the application for us is crucial to understand ourselves. It's an additional impact of the world of Tumah and Tahara and the world of Kedusha and Chodesh and Chol. The Sanctity Foundation makes it easy for us to regard some things as untouchable in both a bad way, because something is so dirty or polluted, we want to stay away, and in a good way, because something is so hallowed, we would say so sacred, so kadosh, that we want to protect it from desecration, from chilul. If we had no sense of disgust, I believe we would also have no sense of the sacred. And if you think as I do, that one of the great unsolved mysteries is how people ever came together to form large cooperative societies, then you might take a special interest in the psychology of sacredness. We call this Kedusha. He has a secular view, but look at what he writes. Why do people so readily treat objects, flags, religious objects like crosses and other religions, places? He writes other religious places like Mecca for other religions. A battlefield related to the birth of your nation. People, saints, we would say tzaddikim, heroes, giborim, and principles, liberty, fraternity, equality, as though they were of infinite value. Whatever its origins, the psychology of sacredness helps bind individuals into moral communities. When someone in a moral community desecrates one of the sacred pillars supporting the community, the reaction is sure to be swift, emotional, collective, and punitive. Just to think about what that means, how it binds us as a people, and how we have a whole overlay as Klal Yisrael to understand a world through the prism of a metaphysical reality of Tumah and Tahara. Let's talk about Urchatz, the dipped vegetables. Generally, not at the Seder, every day of the year, from a halachic vantage point, the Gemara in Pesachim says, Amar b'Lazar, Amar b'Oshia, you dip something in liquid, you have to wash until Yadayim. Why? We're running short on time. We'll give you all the mechanics back and forth. But suffice it to say, today we don't do it anymore, generally. Look at Tosfot at the bottom, the highlighted line. We don't do Netilat anymore for dipped vegetables. Washing for bread, that's Kedusha and Nikiyut. The washing here is about the Tumah issue. And the Chacham saying, this Tosfot Paskin, this is our minhag until today for most of us, say, really, we don't, we're just not in Izhar. The Pri Megadim, the Chazon Ish, I didn't give you here, they say, based on this Tosfot, the Isser here being referred to as Zihirut, vigilance. We're not as vigilant today, they both say, and we're not in Izhar for it, and therefore, based on this Tosfot, most latter-day poskim, not all, most, or many, I should say, I'm going to say most, I know all, many, say we don't do Netilat. By the way, that's why when we do it at the Seder, we don't make a bracha anymore. By the way, the Rambam writes, I just give you here the lines of his ordering of the Seder. What do you say? V'charkach mevarach al Netilat Yadayim. V'notel yadav, umvin shulchan aruch, and then there's going to be the vegetable. And what are you going to do? You're going to eat your karpas. Karpas is going to get dipped. You make a bracha. The Rambam says, make a bracha on Urchatz. What do we do at my Seder from time more than time of a little boy? Urchatz, no bracha, no bracha. Our minhag is no bracha. It wasn't the Rambam's minhag. By the by, there are others also. What does Rashi say? Rashi says, you need a bracha for Urchatz. Hagot Maimoni, here on the Rambam, quoting from Rabbeinu Shmaya in the name of Rashi, one of the students of Rashi, you need a bracha. The Gaonim, all the Gaonim, I don't know, all, many, says the Gaonim generally, you need a bracha for Urchatz. We don't do a bracha, but leave it out. Why not? Like I said, we follow the Bali Tosfot. That's our psak. But for the Rambam, for Rashi, for the Gaonim, there's a continuity between the eating of bread and the eating of this dipped vegetable, and it's true all the time. So practical, what happens at the Seder? Shulchan Aruch Paskins, no bracha. No bracha at Urchatz. Top line from the Shulchan Aruch, not to yadav l'tzorach tibul rishon, v'lo yivarach al hanatila. Says the Taz. I don't understand. What you're at the Seder, a whole year, not one time did anybody ever wash for wet vegetables. You're going to eat a fruit salad. I got to wash my hands. He writes, you can read it for yourself. He writes it a beautiful rhetorical question, tongue-in-cheek. The Nishtana halayla zeh mikol yamim shebashana. Now comes the Seder. Everybody go wash. I just sat down to make Kiddush. Can I please just eat my vegetable and get to my halach ma'an and Nishtana? The kids are tired. Everybody go wash. Nishtana halayla zeh. Why is this night so different? What's changed? And indeed, the Vilna Gaon Paskins, you should be makpid the whole year. The Mishnah Berurah writes, ideally we should be more consistent. The Mishnah Berurah says we should be more consistent based on this Taz. You should do it every night. If you're going to be, he says, if you want to be matar yourself, the Taz writes here, you want to be matar yourself with your Leila Seder? Great, it's a launching pad. Do it the rest of the year. I'll say personally, I'm not makpid the rest of the year. I follow Tosfot and the Chazon Ish, the Prima Gun. I don't do it. Maybe there are people out there, they'll hear this, say, oh, now I'm going to be strict. But why bother? So why do we bother? And we don't make a bracha. Why? 3 reasons. We're coming here to the conclusion. 3 reasons. Urchatz. Number 1. We wash our hands because it is, says Rav Ruven Margoliot in his HaGadol, is derech cherut usror lenakot hayadayim af lifnei achila me'uta. Even if you're going to have a small meal. This Netilat, it would seem, is for the purpose of showing I am free. I am an aristocrat in my own way as a Jew. I want to have clean hands when I sit down, even for a small meal. Slavery is filth. We know the terrible stories from some of us, and we heard from our bubbies and zadis about the filth and the squalor they had to live through, whether during times of persecution or stam, just times of abject poverty, when water was not so readily available, pumping mamash into one's home, etc. So to have clean hands is a sign of freedom. The Aruch HaShulchan writes, based on the Levush. The Levush who lived at the same time as the Shulchan Aruch, the Rabbi Yosef Karo, the same time as the Ramah, 16th century. The Levush says, you know how we're doing it? We have no truma, but Meheri Yibane HaMikdash. Soon, speedily, the Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt. We'll have truma again. We want to be ready. We want to remember what was, and we want to get ready for the future. I don't know about you. I probably should. Chodesh Nisan, with everything going on, I should have a little suitcase packed, just in case Eliyahu Navi shows up on Twitter before Yontif. Every Facebook page. You understand how it's going to happen? You understand? How is Eliyahu Navi's voice going to be heard through the whole world? Nisan v'niflot, there's going to be a huge megaphone. It's possible. It's also possible every single person's phone is going to buzz, the emergency buzz. Hi, this is Eliyahu Navi. I'm here. Let's go. Yeah, this is how it's going to happen. We wondered for many centuries, how's the world going to unite? CNN, Fox News, whatever you like to watch, everything. It's all the screens. It's going to be Eliyahu Navi. Hi, I'm here. See the donkey? Let's go. So I don't have a bag packed. But every time I wash my hands in Netilat Yadayim, particularly the Leil HaSeder, washing Urchatz, washing on a higher level than normal, that's because I remember what was, but I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready to try to be a person who is ready for the arrival of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Finally, the Sharat Tziyun, quoting from the Chok Yaakov, that the reason why we have to do the Netilat Yadayim of Urchatz, no bracha, is that our children will ask us a question. So that the redeemed children will ask us, what is Tameh and what is Tahor in this world? We're Jews in this world. How much Tuma is there in general culture? How much is there that is impure, that's not hurting anybody, except it's hurting their neshamas? How many of us struggle with those issues of Tuma and Tahara in this world on all levels? Chazal remind us that even at a time of Galut, Tuma and Tahara of the hands matter. Tuma and Tahara of the eyes matter. Tuma and Tahara matters, of course, not just in terms of the Tuma de Oraita from Hilchot Tahara Mishpacha, which is a mainstay of what it means to be a Jew, but the Tumat Meitim, the Kohanim and their children, they don't go to funerals. This is why. What is Tameh and what is Tahor in the world? The question shouldn't be, why are we washing our hands? They ask, why are you washing your hands with no bracha? You tell them, because the world we see is a world filled with Tuma and with the capacity for tahara, and we, Klal Yisrael, aspire to tahara. And that's where we come back to Yetziat Mitzrayim. Egypt is a death cult. The night of the Seder is about promulgating a worldview that avoids Tumah, that aspires to Tahara and Kedusha. Leaving Egypt was about leaving what many among our earlier Chachamim described as coming up from the 49 levels of Tumah, of which we were on level 49. Israelis say sometimes about their bank accounts, Chayim b'minus, Chayinu b'minus, arba'im v'teisha. We were minus 49. If you understand this, then you understand the death cult of Egypt, obsessed, its priests obsessed with death and death rites. You know what our priests do? You know what our Kohanim do? They don't go to the cemetery. Our Kohanim are saying, L'chaim, L'chaim, L'chaim. And if you're not actually personally a Kohen, realize that when you do Netilat Yadayim, you are enacting the idea that you are aspiring to be a Kohen. I didn't just mean it as a homiletic device. Ken Yashem Elokechem v'it kadishtem v'item kedoshim ki kadosh ani lo titamu et nafshotechem chol asher harumeis al haaretz ki Yashem ma'aleh etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem elokim v'item kedoshim ki kadosh ani. The Ritva writes, why is the bracha called Netilat Yadayim, taking the hands? Says the Ritva, I give you a highlighted line, Milashon, Su'u Yadayim Chodesh, from the book of Tehillim, raise up your hands in sanctity and give a bracha to Hashem, Ubarachu et Hashem. Every time we lift up our hands in Netilat Yadayim, we wash the hands, we're lifting up our hands to serve Hashem. Says the Gemara, Masechet Pesachim and Kuf Tet Vav, okay, I washed my hands, Urchatz. Why do I have to wash again for Netilat Yadayim, for the bread? For the matzah, my hands are already tar. What actually happened? I touched, what actually, I didn't get up from the table, so I have to wash again. Even after a person washes, there is a specter of something that each of us is subject to because we're human. And that is forgetfulness. Hesech hadat. Washing one's hands means vigilance. And unfortunately, for so many of us, it's hard to hold that in mind. We get distracted. We've talked about other things. This could be on account of the HaGadol. Maybe it's because of Hallel that we recited. There was a distraction. The person touched something unclean. Even at the Seder itself, a distraction from the state of Tahara, thinking, oh, what is our situation now? Maybe the distraction will be a person will allow that terrible virus as a subject matter to dominate a night that is all in all happy. It is Matchil Begnut, but it's Messiah, Shvach, with great praise of Hashem and thanksgiving and Hallel and Hodah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're deeply concerned about Tumah on all levels. But in the Leil HaSeder, we aspire to Kedusha. It's like our forebears wrote, many of them, that the minhag to wear the kittel is to show that we are going not to death, but we are going to wear the same garb that we wear on the night of Yom Kippurim, because here we are aspiring to holiness and to serve Hashem as Kohanim, who wore the kittel, their own white garments, and their kutonot when they went in to do their work. When else do we wash our hands? We wash our hands when we leave a cemetery. And we wash our hands every day when we wake up in the morning. The Rosh says we wash our hands in the morning because we might have touched a covered place while we slept. The Rashba writes, we wash our hands in the morning because we are like a new creature. Our souls are given back to us. And the first thing we do is we take forward that idea from Sefer Eicha, Chadashim labakarim rabba emunatecha. We are renewed in the morning. Great is your faithfulness, Hashem. Therefore, we go to wash our hands. And then, of course, we have to thank Hashem that we have an opportunity to serve Him. And therefore, in the morning, we should wash our hands, writes the Mishnah Brura from the Chai Adam, from a kli, from a vessel, kekohen shemekadesh yadav min hakiyor kodem avodato, like a kohen who is sanctifying his hands before serving in the Makom HaMikdash. I want to close with this story. The picture of the man you see here is named Reb Menachem Mendel Alter, Hashem Yikom Damo. He was the youngest son of the Sfas Emes. One of his brothers was the Imre Emes, the Ger Rebbe, who was able to escape from Europe and who made it out. His brother Menachem Mendel was not as lucky. He was the son of the great and holy Sfas Emes. He was, as it were, not just a rabbi, which would have been enough, of a town called Pabiansk, but he also was the chairman of the Agudat HaRabbanim of all of Poland. He was one of the Chaverim in the Moetzet Gedolei HaTorah of Agudat Israel in Europe. He was one of the people who founded the Haredi newspapers in Poland. And he was one of the great leaders of Klal Yisrael in the Warsaw Ghetto. He was taken to Treblinka. Many of us in our shul, 30 of us, took a trip to see that trek from Warsaw to Treblinka and what's left of it. And here is the story of Reb Menachem Mendel of Alter. An eyewitness who escaped from Treblinka saw the Rebbe of Pabiansk, Reb Menachem Mendel Alter, the brother of the Admor of Gur and the president, the chairman of the Igudat HaRabbanim of Poland. He heard Reb Mendel Alter in the changing room in Treblinka. He heard that they were telling them all to take off their clothing. He started realizing what was going to happen. There was a capo there, sadly, a Jew who betrayed. He said to this capo, I beg you, bring me a cup of water now. I promise you, I give you olam haba if you give me a little water right now. He begged him. The capo laughed. The capo said, you want a drink now? Where you're going, you're not going to need it. He brought him the cup. When the cup came, the Rebbe of Pabiansk said, Yehudim, hava v'nomar vidu lifnei hamavet. Let us together say the vidui before we die. And he poured the water over his hands, Netilat Yadayim. They began to say the vidui together when one of the Nazis, Yamach Shemam v'zichram, came into the changing room and said, what's going on here? This is a house of prayer? And he fired bullets straight into the changing room. This story was written up in Hebrew in Mordechai Eliav's Sefer, Ani Mamin. It appears in a book that was written by the rabbi of Or Torah, or the rabbi at the beginning of Or Torah, one of the founders of Or Torah, Rabbi Eliezer Berkovitz, in a book called With God in Hell. And he describes that it was used in order to make Netilat Yadayim right then and there. The story was picked up also by a newspaper in Eretz Yisrael and was published there. You can find it also online, where it describes in this article about this story that there is a line that goes from Rabbi Akiva until Rabbi Mendel of Alter. There's a line that connects the two of them and the way in which they each did Netilat Yadayim, appreciating what was at stake and what their role was as Ovdei Hashem. This picture is a picture of an amalgam of different things. The top right-hand corner took place, not figuratively, actually 3 weeks ago. The bottom left-hand corner is a picture of the people gathered at last year's 4 Cups event before Pesach. That's only a fraction of the people in the room. And of course, you can recognize on the left-hand side, that's Hoshana Rabbah. Those are our Sifrei Torah. This is our Beit Knesset. Bate Knesiot and Bate Medrash around the world that for the time being have fallen silent in the physical sense. But each of us at home has our own kior, our own sink, our own capability to make from our homes a mikdash ma'at, and to be able to be Jews who engage in the elements of the Seder of Urchatz and of Rachtza, of a Netilat Yadayim, each time we have a meal, and each time a Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us back our neshamas. I want to submit to you in closing this practical note, and I've said this a few times in the shul, and I hope this filled it out now. I've asked that in our shul, since the last parsha that we read in our shul before we had to withdraw from our heichal, was the Parshat HaKiyor from Parshat Kitisa, that everyone who has an Art Scroll City can find it on page 30. If you don't find it in your siddur, it's the first thing in the section known as Korbanot. Please, until we come back home, until we can come back to our Bate Knesiot, and maybe forevermore, to remember this time, to remind ourselves about the mitzvah of washing hands. The notion that we are following in line with those who have come before us, who are people who are notle yadayim, who raise up their hands, su'yudechem Chodesh, uvarachu et Hashem, raise up your hands in sanctity and give a bracha to Hashem, and a fulfillment of the aspiration, vatem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim, v'goy kadosh. And you shall be for me, a Kadosh Baruch Hu told us at Har Sinai, we should be a kingdom filled with Kohanim, and a holy nation, and one that aspires to Kedusha. Whichever one, a Chag, Kasher, V'Sameach, both of those wishes are so important now, not just of the kashrus of Pesach, but of the simcha of Pesach, should be zocha to the geula hashlema v'hamitit now. The window of opportunity is more open in this month than any other time of the year. And we are living at a grand moment of Jewish history, even if we are going through right now an extremely challenging time. Chag Kasher v'sameach to one and all. And we'll be joining together again on Sunday morning for a different kind of Shabbos HaGadol drasha. That one's much more chizuk, much less halacha, about making a Seder to confront chaos, particularly for this year. Chag Kasher v'sameach.